Off you go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Irish Abroad Show on this Sunday evening on Irish Football Fan TV with myself, Jared Brown, where I'm once again delighted to be joined, as always, by Paul Needham and Adam Courtney. Lads, how are you all keeping? First with yourself, Paul.
I had a horrendous week of football this week, so my own team lost, Everton lost, Shelburne lost. Not been a great weekend of football now. But here we are again. How are you? You must be happy with St. Pat's win on Friday night.
Yeah, it's kind of a mixture of the good, the bad, the ugly, I think, really, this weekend for me from a sporting front. As you mentioned, started off so good with past getting the bragging rights across the city of Dublin with that victory against Shells on Friday evening, and it's kind of gone downhill since. Forgetful 0-0 draw for Liverpool last night against Crystal Palace. Suddenly, this theory of Liverpool are back is well and truly out the window after a horrendous week, and top four now seems as distant again. With Spurs winning against Chelsea, which I'm sure Adam would probably might be able to talk to us a little bit about as well. And I think anyone who knows as well has been listening to the channel and watching the channel over the years knows well I'm big into GA as well. And Roscommon had a bad defeat away to Monaghan today, but it was only their first defeat of the year, so I won't cry too much over that. But yeah, just one of them kind of typical sporting weekends where you get a bit of everything. What about yourself, Adam? As I mentioned there, another bad day at the office for Chelsea, but as we were talking off air, you're all happy on other sides because after two games, the league is over. Bulls are champions. Congratulations.
Yeah, Ball's doing they're doing the double this year, 100%. Yeah, no, like it was a great weekend for Balls. For Chelsea, obviously it's another story. Bit grim at the moment, but yeah, for Balls it was an unbelievable game and class atmosphere as well. So I'm happy in the Balls front, but the Chelsea front I'd rather just brush over and move on.
And to any both fans out there, I'm only joking. I'm only being sarcastic. Of course, the league isn't over yet. But yeah, very, very good start for them. And of course, along with St. Pat's and the likes of Derry as well. But we'll dip into recapping on the weekend gone by. We're going to do the Premier League and Championship in one. I have notes on that, so I'll start it off here. In the Premier League, just two Irish players made appearances this weekend, and it was disappointing fare for both Gavin Bazunu and Seamus Coleman. No clean sheet for Gavin Bazunu this week, as Southampton lost 1-0 away to Leeds United in that big relegation 6 point yesterday. Big win for Leeds. They climb out of the bottom three at Everton's expense, as we'll talk about in a second. Hampshire Live gave Bazunu a 5 out of 10 rating, saying wasn't called into action at all that much in the first half, despite Leeds' dominance. Held his own when required before Leeds' goal, which smothered underneath him. Should have done better. As I mentioned, that win for Leeds is kind of on the bottom three because Everton and Seamus Coleman didn't have a much better day either. They suffered disappointing 2-0 defeat at home to Aston Villa. So it's kind of been an up and down start so far for Sean Dyche. Win, loss kind of way. Um, the Liverpool Echo gave him a 7 out of 10 rating, saying another purposeful display from Everton's captain. But whereas he was able to push forward with regularity in the first half, he found himself pinned back more after the break. I mentioned there are only two players that seen action in the Premier League. There's been a lot of Irish players, the likes of Nathan Collins, Shane Duffy. They were unused subs in that game between Fulham and Wolves Friday night, and Mark Travers and Creevin Kelleher also unused subs for their respective clubs. In the Championship, there was midweek games gone by, but there was no real major Irish involvement from that. So just the weekend. Sammy Smollex was among the scorers as Blackburn Rovers kept up their playoff push with a 3-1 win away to QPR. Langside gave him a 7 out of 10 rating, saying he scored his first goal since October at a crucial moment in the game. Did really well and sipped it underneath the goalkeeper's legs, ran his socks off. And of course, if you haven't seen his goal already, it is there to view on our socials. So make sure to check it out. A nice, tidy finish from Sammy Smollex. There was huge Irish involvement in Preston North End's 2-1 win over Wigan Athletic. So it all started when Greg Cunningham own goal put Wigan 1-0 in front. Preston then equalised through loanee Tom Cannon, of course, on loan from Everton. That's his first goal since joining from Preston. I think it could be correct in saying it's his first senior goal as well, with the assist coming from fellow Irish teammate
First championship
Alan
goal, yeah.
First championship goal, yeah. With the assist coming from fellow Irish teammate Alan Brown. And then the Irish involvement was rounded off with Robbie Brady being sent off for 2 yellow cards. Not quite sure what it was for, but he was only on the pitch about 15 minutes, so not great for Robbie.
Two yellows, I think.
There. Sorry?
2 yellows, I think.
2 yellows, yeah, but I don't know what the instance were.
The second one looked a bit
or,
just like he was just late and he just got a yellow and he just got his marching orders.
Yeah. But yeah, good win for Preston there as well, and good to get a response, because I think Alan Brown kind of was very vocal after their bad defeat against Burnley. I know it was last week or the week before. I think it was actually 2 weeks ago. And then finally, Michael Obafemi, who was of much debate on this show over the last kind of couple of weeks, will continue to be again today, because he came off the bench and scored his second goal for Burnley. I think only 6 or 7 minutes after being introduced. He completed the scoring in their 4-0 victory over Huddersfield Town. And again, if you haven't already, you can check out his goal on our socials. Lanks I've given him a 7 out of 10 rating, saying made a positive impact from the bench, scoring the fourth. And while I was at it, I checked out Josh Cullen's ratings, and as ever, they remain consistently high with an 8 out of 10 rating, saying kept things ticking over well in central midfield for the Claret, cool and calm in possession throughout. So that's all from the Premier League and the Championship. I might come to you, Paul, first, because I know it wasn't televised yesterday, the Everton game, but I'm not sure if you got a chance to maybe check it out through a stream or something, or maybe seen the highlights or anything else like that. But obviously, first and foremost, look, very disappointing result, because it sucks you back into the bottom three after that massive win against Leeds last week. There's no doubt about it. Sean Dyche there's been some improvements since he's taken over, but it's kind of been a Jekyll and Hyde, a little bit up and down, probably to be expected. But overall, how was the fair, and how did Seamus play? Would you kind of go along with the quotes that were given to us there from Liverpool Echo on his performance, that would seem to be pretty positive despite a bad day at the office?
Yeah, I think Toffee TV were quite generous as well. They gave him a 7, and their player ratings, and they're usually quite ruthless in terms of the player rating. So they said he got up and down as much as he could, probably better defensively than he was attacking wise, which is fairly standard for Seamus these days. The age of him and stuff like that. I think it's getting to a stage now where Nathan Patterson does need to come back, just to allow Seamus to have a little bit of a rest in between games. I think there's 2 games this week as well, so I think Dyche is really looking to get Patterson back to obviously then accommodate Seamus Coleman, so then Seamus could maybe play one game, Patterson could play the other. So I think that's what they're looking to do at the moment, because again, like last season, towards the end of the season, Seamus Coleman was depended on largely, and it was probably a bit unfair that he seemed to be the only right back at the club, and he was 33 at the time, and couldn't really play as often as he would like. And if you look at the times when he plays for Ireland, a lot of the time he gets injured when he plays the 3-game window. A lot of the time he'll end up getting a hamstring strain or something like that. So yeah, look, he was as consistent as ever, but it's the other players I worry about. I never really have to worry about Seamus Coleman having a, so to speak, bad game, other than maybe a game against Liverpool. For some reason, Liverpool lately have Coleman's number, but other than that, he tends to play quite well a lot of times. You look at Nonto, he kept him quiet. You look at Martinelli, he kept him quiet. And other players as well. Zaha, he always has a good game against him. So he's definitely gotten better defensively over the years, but it's up to the lads up the other end of the pitch. And when you're playing a lot of games with no real recognised centre forward or target man, with Calvert-Lewin out, and God knows when he'll be back properly, that it's going to be difficult for Everton to get wins. And you're looking at other players to chip in, like Coleman did last week, and Tarkowski then against Arsenal. And if they don't score, or decisions go against you, like the penalty, some people saying it wasn't a penalty, some people saying it was. I've seen them given. I'm not sure how I feel about the penalty, but it doesn't really matter. It happened and they scored, and once you get the first goal in games, a lot of the time in the Premier League, it's huge, and that can, especially when you're down near the bottom, that can ultimately decide your fate. So I think Everton need to find ways of scoring other than just relying on centre forward scoring. I know people like Doucouré and stuff like that need to start scoring goals as well. So yeah, they'd be heavily relying on other people to score for the team.
Yeah, since actually Sean Dyche come in, both the goals and scoring the 10 have actually both been by defenders. So I think, as you say, like Everton need a lot more from their players in the final third of the pitch. And as you mentioned, huge week now, two big, two tricky away games away to Arsenal. They obviously have a good recent history against that win only 3 weeks ago. And then probably the more important and pivotal game of the two of them, away to Nottingham Forest, which I think you could still very much say is a relegation 6-pointer. Sitting Forest are far from out of it just yet. We are going live as well, so don't be afraid to get your comment in, and we will definitely try and get through as many of them as we possibly can. Adam, I'm not kind of quite sure. We didn't chat too much actually off air about what football was seen over the weekend, so I'm not kind of quite sure what you kind of got to see. But just from what I read through there in the Premier League and the Championship, what kind of is the main thing that stood out for you, and you're taking away the most from this weekend's action?
Well, I suppose it has to be Burnley, really. I'm just really impressed with how well the Irish lads are doing there. Like, they've got such a strong contingent there at the moment, and it's great to see that they're playing really good football. It's not just, like a team kind of battling it out every week. They're playing really impressive football, and especially I think Josh Cullen is probably the player that I'm most impressed with this season, in terms of someone who I probably didn't expect as much from as what he's done. Obviously, he came from Anderlecht with Vincent Kompany, and he's a mainstay for Burnley, and he looks like he's going to be a mainstay for Ireland as well. Like, he's probably the first team sheet at the moment. Like, he's really controlling the tempo of the game for Burnley at the moment in the league. I haven't obviously been watching them every week, but from what I've watched of them this season, they've been so impressive. Obviously, Obafemi's come in and done really well there as well. Got a couple of goals. Obviously, Luke McNally's still on their books, so he could be back there in 6 months with how well he's done at Coventry. So there's a real strong vision of Irish, and Josh Cullen, someone who really want to see how he gets on against France, because I'm fairly sure he'll be starting in that game.
Yeah, you've also, I think, got Dara. I don't know how he was pronunciation. His surname was Acosta or Costello. I think also Costello. He's also on loan as well from Bradford, but he'd actually play some of the early games Championship. So, as you say, big kind of Irish presence there at the moment. Good kind of typical kind of thing. You're out for a couple of pints on Saturday night, leads to a couple of kind of football kind of pubs kind of talk. And one of the debates we came up with last night was, it's inevitable Burnley are going to go up, barring the greatest collapse in the history of any football league. But next season, do you think Kompany will be bold and will back to their style of football and kind of fancy their chance? You look at, like, Bielsa came up, stuck to his roots, really paid off Leeds in the first season. There's other examples as well. What do you kind of think of that? And do you think it'd be kind of good to see, because you might get a chance to really see Josh Cullen flourish in the Premier League next season? Because, like I said, unless for some random reason decide to sell him, he's going to be a Premier League player next season. So I leave it open to Paul and Adam, whoever wants to take the floor first.
I just see a comment coming in there from Nathan Fitzpatrick. He just says, do you think Collins is looking at Burnley now and thinking what could have been on the Kompany? Might be a good question to put to you, Adam.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Something I actually haven't thought about, but yeah, like, when you think of it now, like, obviously the first few months at Wolves went so well for Collins, but he's kind of fallen out of favour. I wouldn't be too worried though. I suppose, like, you look at Dawson's come in there, like, he's 33, he's not going to be around forever. I do think there'll be minutes there for Collins, but then, yeah, I suppose it was a tough move at the time. Like, it's probably easier to say in hindsight that, he might have made the wrong decision or whatever, but I still think at the time, he's moving from a team who got to a Premier League side. So yeah, I suppose maybe there is a part of him that would think that, but I think I still stick for Wolves right now, because he's at a really good team. I know that they are in a bit of a relegation battle and he's not really getting much of a game time, but I do think he'll come good at Wolves, and he'll be starting games more regularly. I know he's just had a tough time as of late, but yeah, it would be interesting to see him at Burnley. That would be another Irish lad there, but Burnley are doing so well. I am really excited. Just touching on what Jared said there about how Kompany will bring the team into the Premier League. I think you've seen a lot of teams in the last kind of 4 or 5 years in the Premier League. They've come up and they've stuck with their style of football. Obviously, you said Bielsa there. He's definitely one of them. Even Daniel Farke at Norwich a few years ago, like, they came up playing this really expansive brand of football, and they still stuck it out, and they got relegated, but they never kind of changed from their principles. Like, they didn't just go. Like, I think it doesn't really make much sense to win the championship, playing this unbelievable kind of attractive style of football, and then coming up and just hoofing the ball along. Like, that doesn't really kind of fit with a lot of these managers, because they've got a real strong philosophy that they've kind of ingrained in players over a number of years. So I do think that Vincent Kompany, he probably won't want to be kind of pigeonholed into that kind of pragmatic manager at the bottom of the league. I think he'll probably see himself managing a top club in the coming years. So I'm sure that'll be his aims anyway. So I think he will probably stick to his principles, and I think that would get the best of players like Josh Cullen, who's really, really impressive in that kind of ball dominant team. And I know obviously you probably won't have that much possession in the Premier League as you would in the Championship, but I think it would be an interesting prospect. I think it goes one or two ways with these teams when they get promoted. They either kind of get relegated like pretty badly, like the way Norwich did, or they do like a Leeds where they kind of come up and do really well. So it'll be interesting to see how Burnley do. Obviously, I hope they have a good season next year in the Premier League because it looks like they'll get there.
I think with Josh Cullen, I think he'll be going into the Premier League next season. Obviously, as Jerry said, if things go well, as they should, that he probably has to go in there with a point to prove. He's proven it at international level. He can do it. He's proven it probably in Europe with the Europa League and stuff like that with Anderlecht that he could do it. And now he probably feels like he has to prove it himself in England. Maybe just a point to himself. I see a lot of people raving about him every week at Burnley. Michael Obafemi probably stole his thunder a bit yesterday because he scored the goal. And, Cullen's not the goal scoring midfielder maybe that they're looking to get, but I think, or not necessarily not looking to get, but I mean, he doesn't really, his scoring goals isn't his forte. It's, building up play and getting involved that way and smashing into tackles and being an all out aggressive midfielder and covering everywhere around the pitch, not so much scoring the goals. I think his style will suit the Premier League next season, and it'll be interesting to see, obviously, if all goes well, how well he will play next season. And if he doesn't get up to the Premier League, will he be bought? Because he's probably within a shout of being the Championship Player of the Year as well. I know he's not scoring goals, but like if you look at his performances, you look at the stats every week, he's always one of the highest performing midfielders. How do you feel about it, Chair?
Just even kind of to try the 2 points in here about Nathan Collins and Josh Cullen. Like, it's amazing. The Nathan Collins one is just hindsight being a wonderful thing. It's the first thing that springs to mind, because I kind of remember initially kind of think at the time maybe it might be a bad thing to stay with Burnley because he's still kind of so young. There's a good chance to kind of bounce back, but like everyone's kind of like, no, there's a certain future, and just the way it's kind of turned out. But like I would still kind of very much agree with what Adam was kind of saying there. I think overall in general, I think it'd be fine from it was. I think they're going to stay up. They've not exactly shot the lights out of their form the last couple of weeks, but it's definitely improved since the World Cup break, and you kind of feel that they will kind of get towards that safety mark, and I think there will be opportunities kind of for him. Like in terms of Josh Cullen, like I think even like you said, like I think that he'll even definitely want to prove a point to his former employers, because there's times he came in for cup games for West Ham and done kind of quite well, and then suddenly, I remember I think there was one game they played Charlton in the League Cup, he got man of the match, and then the next league game he wasn't even in the match day squad. Like, so I think he'll even have that kind of point to maybe prove a little bit. I'd be confident, optimistic of his chances in terms of performance level wise in the Premier League next year. I definitely think when Burnley's promotion is confirmed that he's going to be part of their plans, because I think company really seems to kind of buy into him. Like he, seems to take his games to another level under Anderlecht. He was one of his first signings and he moved on, so it's kind of like as if company really, really placed a lot of trust in him, which is great to see. And I think that's rubbed off him and given him confidence. He's really, really grown in an Ireland shirt. Like I think we were saying, I don't know if it was ourselves or I was saying it to a mate, like he wasn't even actually getting a sniff of Stephen Kenny's first couple of squads. He only got in the odd time because of COVID outbursts or injuries, and then suddenly ever since that game in Belgrade when he was thrown in against Serbia, he hasn't kind of looked back and he's really, really stepped up. I remember we were saying even during COVID at the time, I think he was on loan at Charlton and he was in the age bracket, I think 23, 24. We're kind of thinking, Jesus, he really needs to kind of start, grabbing his career by the scruff of the neck, or it's going to kind of pass him by and do something. And he's really done that, and he's really taken on maturity and a leadership and to his game, and he looks kind of very, very comfortable. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing him in the Premier League next year. Like I said, all going well, that he will be part of Burnley's plans. And I think he will. And I think he can definitely do very well. We've seen John Egan step up. That time with Sheffield United, Ended Stevens was a revelation as well. Matt Doherty, he took like a duck to water when Wolves came up, and they were all teams that impressed in coming up from the Championship and an aura about them. And Burnley are heading the same way, and I think Josh is going to fill into them shoes, hopefully pretty well come next August. Yeah,
it's just funny you say that about Josh Cullen, because I remember the last game I was at before COVID properly hit. It was kind of that week where COVID was kind of really taken seriously. I was over in London doing an interview with Obafemi, and I was in Charlton's Stadium de Valley, and the under-23s were playing, and they actually had Aidan McGeady at Charlton Josh Cullen, and there was one more Irish player, just escapes me at the moment, I can't think right now, but Josh Cullen was there, and they were actually all doing the coaching badges, so he actually, you could see he studies the game, even at that young age that he was there. And he was getting in a lot of squads under Mick McCarthy at the time, because Mick was actually manager at that time. Maybe Mick wasn't really playing him, but I think he'd played his game in November against Bulgaria. And if you kind of look back to since then, how much he's really kicked on from there, he's been excellent. So yeah, it's great to see how far his career has came. Now, I don't think by any stretch of imagination that he is finished developing or anything like that. I feel like he probably feels like he has a whole new level to reach, and I'm sure he will reach, especially with Company and the way Company believes in him, and he seems to be a real disciple to everything the Company wants. So and a real kind of marker in that team, that, you know, the cog that gets them going. And he's the same with Ireland. He's the first name of the team sheet for Ireland now, in my opinion. I don't think you could have a midfield without Josh Cullen in it for Ireland. But yeah, it's positive though to hear him getting rave reviews every week. And just regarding Collins, I just don't know. I still think it's early days. I still think, if you look at it, he's one of the most exciting centre backs of his age group, knocking around. I think in the Premier League. And it wasn't that long ago people were talking about him, you know, having a really good season at Wolves, and all of a sudden he's Man United's new star signing. So these testing times come for players all the time. It's up to him now to just make sure he gets his head down, works hard, gets himself back in the team, and then proves himself once he gets back in the team. And I'm sure he will. He seems to have a great attitude about him.
Yeah, I'd pretty much kind of agree with you on that as well. Like, I think this will definitely be a spell when he looks back in his career and kind of how well he kind of coped and deal with it. And if he can, you know, deal with the mental side of things, of, you know, not being in the team, not getting the minutes, and kind of come back stronger, you know, it'll definitely kind of stand him in good stead. Like, you still forget kind of how quite young he is. Like, it probably just didn't help the fact that Dawson comes in, hits the ground running straight away. I think got a goal early on. They picked up kind of a couple of wins. The old habits, you don't change a winning team. But I definitely think, like, Wolves are in a situation where they have a midweek game and a weekend game. There could be a possibility and open up there for squad rotation, and there could be an opportunity for him to get back in. And I think he'll probably even know himself, if he gets that chance and takes it, you know, it could very much work in his favour, and he might be very hard to dislodge from the team then.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll move it on to League One and League Two. I have my list here of people who got assists and goals. So the goal scorers in League One yesterday: David McGoldrick scored in a 4-1 defeat to Barnsley. Jack Taylor scored in a 5-2 win over Plymouth Argyle, and Ronan Curtis back on the score sheet, as you've seen in the title of this video. He was back on the score sheet in a 4-0 win over Cheltenham for Pompey, and Jimmy Keown got a goal as well for Rochdale in League Two. And then we have our assists. Conor Howard obviously provided Didsey with that assist for that goal. Pierce Sweeney's got an assist for Exeter City in their 2-0 win over Cambridge. And Finn Azaz got an assist in the game between Plymouth and Peterborough. And Jack Taylor, who also scored in that game, got an assist too. And Joe Shaughnessy got an assist as well up in the SPFL, but I probably robbed that one away from Adam, so sorry about that. And then a couple of players were booked. I just noticed there Darragh Burns got booked, so good to see him back playing. But Derby County, they're a bit of a weird one, aren't they, in League One? And Plymouth, obviously, who are high flying now, got the defeat against Peterborough. So, Jay, I suppose, is there anything from League One that kind of excites you at the moment? Good to see Curtis back scoring. I don't imagine he'll be in any Ireland squads at the moment, because I haven't seen or heard of him in a while. I think that was through injury. But anything of note striking there for you?
Yeah, Ronan Curtis, just as the last point you finished up on, I was going to say the forgotten man, because I've been looking through Portsmouth's team a lot throughout the weeks and seeing like he's not even playing. I think it's very strange, because he's been one of their main men over the last kind of couple of seasons. But as you alluded to, it's kind of an injury. But in general, it's kind of become a forgotten man. There was a spell there. Maybe it's more so to do with the fortunes of the Ireland team were kind of at a low point, maybe a lot of injuries, but he was getting in around the kind of couple of squads, and like I said, he really hit the ground running early on with Portsmouth. You kind of felt if he kept it going, there was a possibility of a championship move in his career kind of really kind of take off. But he's now kind of, I wouldn't say the wrong side of 25, but he's at that stage where he's now closer to 30 than 20, that kind of way. And you kind of feel that maybe that opportunity's kind of gone from to really kick on and maximise the possibility of his career in terms of playing a higher level and getting near the Ireland squad. I think like we're even talking about like Sammy Smallock scored there in the championship for Blackburn, but like he's well down. I wouldn't say well down, but he's got a good bit to kind of do to get near the Ireland squad. So I think Rowan Curtis just shows how far he's kind of slipped away and how much ground he's got to make up. But look, good for his own point of view, get a goal, get a bit of confidence as well. Like, but that was kind of the main thing I would have taken away from League One as well. Jack Taylor as well, because he's another one as well. Kind of rose quite quickly over through the years. I think he was only playing non-league a couple of years ago. Then got signed by, Peterborough, was playing championship last season. Was a regular for Ireland under-21s. You kind of thought he was someone who might kind of take his career on. It's kind of seemed to stall a little bit. So maybe like a goal and assist like that, yes, it might kind of keep things kind of hopefully a really nice spark for him. And then Finn's lads, like I said, if he kind of keep going the way he is, Plymouth get that promotion sealed, and he can start doing it consistently in the championship. I think he could be someone that might start to come into Stephen Kenny's radar, probably more so for the 2024, am I correct in saying, Nations League campaign, or of course if we're on our way to Germany for that year's summer European Championships.
Yeah, I think just with Plymouth, they've been knocked down to second place, and Sheffield Wednesday are now ahead of them by 3 points, and they have a game in hand on them as well. So that'll be interesting to see at what way that pans out. But Derby County sitting in 6th. Didsey got his 17th goal of the season in a 4-1 defeat. Adam, your thoughts on David McGoldrick this season? And I don't want to hear you telling me that he should be capped, because he shouldn't. Are you there?
Yeah, like he's obviously been really good this season, but yeah, like I'm just I'm really happy for him. I know you were saying previously that you kind of think his time in the first team is done, but you never know. He's a real threat in the air, and his hold-up play is always really good. Whenever I watch him for Ireland, I've been really impressed with him. But overall, like in Derby, like it's great to see so many Irish lads playing there. Like you've got obviously Hurahan, Aaron Cashin's playing nearly every game in centre half. Like Jason Knight's obviously still doing really well there. So it's good to see them. Like they have a good chance of getting into the promotion playoffs. Like I think they're in 6th place at the moment, so they're doing really well. So I'm really happy for David McGoldrick as well, because I always felt like he got kind of a tough time, like from people. I know his goal scoring numbers weren't great over some seasons, but I'm really happy to see him doing so well now in League One. And you never know, maybe he will get capped.
I don't think so. He ruled himself out.
He'd have to do a U-turn, his own decision first and foremost. He's over 2 years retired now at this stage, isn't it?
Yeah, and let's just not get into that, because I just don't think, despite all the goals that he's scoring for Derby County at his age, there's no point in bringing him into an international team. That they were trying to get young players bled in, players like Ferguson, players like Obafemi and stuff like that. He's had his time. Thanks very much, but we'll move on. League Two, not too much to talk about there. So I suppose, Adam, we'll move it over to you. For some reason, your camera is paused for me here, but anyway, fire away. We can still hear you.
Yeah, I think the internet connection is a bit dodgy here, so sorry about that if the camera's not working. But and Scott, you touched obviously there on Joe Shaughnessy, that he played 80. He came on at the 80th minute, got an assist to equalise for St Mirren against St Johnstone in a 1-1 draw. Charles Dunn also played 90 minutes in that game for St Mirren. Jamie McGrath played 78 minutes for Dundee United in their 4-0 loss to Ross County, which leaves them still bottom of the league, which isn't great for McGrath. In terms of the rest of the world, then the kind of main stories, Festi Ebisele and James Abanka are both unused subs on the bench tonight's 2-2 draw for Udinese with Spezia. Festi Abasele, he's obviously a really good player. He's only played 6 league games this season. None of those appearances have been longer than 18 minutes, so they've all been off the bench. And then Abankwa has no apps in the league at all, so it's not really looking that great for him at the moment. Obviously, it's still great to be in a team like that, but then the only other kind of major story from the rest of the world is that Matt Doherty was an unused sub in the Madrid derby yesterday, which ended 1-1. I suppose the main story there, I know we've kind of touched on it before, but I suppose we'll take a bit of a different angle about Matt Doherty. We've talked about now that he hasn't played a minute since he joined from Spurs on deadline day. Do you think with this lack of football that he's, and even in the course of the season at Spurs, I think he only played 12 Premier League games and a lot of them were off the bench as well. Do you kind of think his position is under threat from the lack of football he's played for the upcoming games against March, or do you just think he's such a top player for the country that he's just kind of nailed down in that right wing back slot? I'll go to Paul first with that one.
I was funny enough. I was having this conversation on a different podcast the other day with Toffee TV, and I was saying that usually if you're looking at Matt Doherty would be first choice, but the form that Seamus Coleman has been showing in recent times, even though he probably doesn't have the legs that Matt Doherty does have, you would probably put Seamus Coleman as the starter at the moment. Well, I know I would. But in saying that, Stephen Kenny over time has continuously picked Matt Doherty, even though he hasn't been playing maybe at Spurs, and he used it as a way of trying to get him back into the squad, say for Spurs, or just, if he can have a couple of good games at international level, then to get himself back in at Spurs. And I think he done that the last international break. I think he had a decent enough outing, and he got minutes, and then I think he started to get a couple of minutes under Conte, and then the World Cup happened, so that kind of stalled things. But I think if I was going for it now, I would probably go with Coleman, and I wouldn't have said that till probably 2 weeks ago, because obviously Doherty hasn't been playing at all. Like you said there, 12 games or whatever, and largely substitute appearances. And if you space the games out over the course between the World Cup and that, how many of them were in recent times that he's actually played? So yeah, it's I didn't think it would be as alarming. When he first signed, I thought, okay, he'll get some minutes here and there. Now, look, I understand it's the Madrid derby. He's probably not going to play that because it's so. It's a game that you really have to trust your players for, and defensively, Doherty up against Vinicius Junior or someone like that, I don't know if I would trust that. Even against the most average attacker, he hasn't been great defensively. Good going forward, don't get me wrong, but that's why I would probably go with Seamus. I would definitely go with Seamus against France, just purely down to the fact of that is that defensively he's kept a lot of players quiet, as I said previously at the start of the show when we were speaking about him. So yeah, it's a bit alarming. After you're done, Jer, talking about Ebazeli, there's a couple of comments about Ebazeli there we might get into as well. But yeah, look, I think there's also players playing well at, like Dan McNamara playing really well at Millwall, and another rave review for him yesterday. So he's going quite well, has come out a good few times saying how much he would love to play and represent Ireland. So he could be another option there too. Go on, Jerry.
Yeah, I think it's probably a tricky one for Stephen Kenny, because he's probably facing a similar situation in terms of Nathan Collins, but probably his two main kind of defenders. There's a good possibility as well that Collins could be heading into that game with very little football under his belt. Obviously, that might change. We don't know. So because you're kind of thinking I was kind of thinking she'd still probably start Mark Doherty and shove Seamus Coleman as part of the three, but you're kind of thinking, well, John Egan's going to be nailed down. I still think Collins is going to be nailed down. And I think with the way that Darragh O'Shea is playing and he's playing consistency for West Brom at the moment, you'd imagine that's probably going to back three. So yeah, it is going to be a tricky one. And as you mentioned, possibility for an outside chance as well for John McNamara in that position. Millwall absolutely flying it. They're keeping clean sheets, they're winning games during the playoffs, and he's regularly kind of performing quite well. He's getting back to, I think, the performance levels he would have put in last season. He had a bit of a slow start to the season. So it's an interesting one. Maybe Stephen might look at it and think, well, even if he is not getting much football in his belt, I'll give him the full 90 against Latvia, and that'll kind of remove some rustiness and have him a little bit kind of fresh and sharp. So it's a hard one. So now, at the same time, he's often sometimes maybe gone with both Coleman and Doherty, and switch Doherty over to the left. But I think he will probably still go with James McLean the left that game. Look, again, a lot can happen in kind of 4 weeks, but I think James McLean, big game mentality. You know what you're going to get from him in that game. You know, someone's going to give 100%, and that's the type of performances we're going to need from all Ireland players if we're going to get anything from that game. So, yeah, it's a tricky one. I don't know. To be brutal, part of me would still kind of think just purely because you know you can get a little bit more out of him and maybe a little bit more from an attacking sense. Although not that I think we're going to be that often much in the front four against fans, that you'd still give Doherty the benefit out over Seamus Coleman, who, like I said, is getting minutes under his belt and it is quite playing well. He's probably still one of Everton's standout performers, despite the fact that form has been a little bit rocky over the last kind of couple of weeks. So, yeah, like without kind of giving the standard sitting on the fence answer, but that's kind of where I genuinely don't really kind of quite know, but I would probably still be kind of leaning towards giving Doherty the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point that you raise about the Latvia game. I think that could be a key to giving players minutes. Yeah, but Collins as well. You know, Obafemi not playing either. And also, if there's a couple of injuries, you just never know. You know, Luke McNally is playing unbelievable for Coventry at the moment. Had a hand in their goal as well. At the weekend or yesterday against Sunderland, he made 2 brilliant tackles and then got a bit of play going, and that ended up being he passed to the guy who then assisted for the goal. So he could be an option as well because he's playing in a back 3 at the moment too. So we've competition for places there. Centre half position is thankfully a position that we are blessed with players, but wing back maybe not so much. So I think if Coleman can stay fit between now and the international break, which touch wood will happen, but it may not as well. That week leading up to international week is always a dodgy one, and I always feel like right up until the Sunday evening, till all games are played, I always get very worried that players, you know, will pick up an injury or something like that, or a minor knock, and then they're carrying that into the international break, which isn't good. So you want obviously all players kind of coming in, maybe wrapped in cotton wool. But just on Ebazeli, you touched on him already, Adam, but I'll bring this question to you. It just says Ben Kay has come in. He says Ebazeli and the other lad are at a 10th place Italian league. Strange no other lads go over. I don't think 10th in Italy is too dissimilar to 10th in the Prem. Now, I disagree with that because I do think the Premier League is far better than Serie A. I think that's shown when you look at players that have gone to Serie A and done unbelievably well, came back to the Premier League, and like players like Romelu Lukaku have gone and come back and just struggled. So what do you think on that and your views on Festi Ebazeli, because you'd mentioned him beforehand?
Yeah, I think Festi Ebazeli and Abanga, like the two of them going over in the first place, you just thought that's unbelievable. Like to go to a really, really big team in Italy, like a big club with history, it's unbelievable. And as I said, Festi Ebazeli has played 6 games, all substitute appearances, which is still decent for someone who's 20 years of age. Obviously, he was playing every game at Derby last season, but now he's really stepped up to a higher level. Like he's come on for a game. I think he came on for a few minutes against AC Milan, first game of the season. So, like playing against teams like that is just unbelievable at that age, especially like as an Irish lad. It's not like you see that too often. I'd be probably a bit more worried about James Abankwah, the fact that he hasn't played a game. And I was looking through his stats earlier. He hasn't actually played even for the Udinese youth team since November. So I think they've kind of fully committed him to the first team, but he's not ever coming on. He hasn't played a minute in the league. So that's kind of someone I'd be more worried about. Like I was thinking maybe in January would he go on a loan or something like that because he hasn't played any games. But I suppose maybe he's thinking, you know, if there's just one injury at centre back, suddenly he's, you know, maybe getting a chance and taking it. You never know. So, but I suppose if it kind of continues like that, I think Festi Ebazeli wouldn't be too disheartened with 6 league appearances this stage of the season. Like I know it's not great; he's not playing every minute, but he is getting minutes in a top 5 league at that age, which is really, really impressive. At Banco, I would be slightly more concerned about for the reasons I've stated, but I think I'd still. Well, they don't really have a choice. It's until the summer now, but I would write it out for the two of them and see how they go, and then in the summer kind of reassess their options. Like if Udinese kind of make signings in their positions, then you'd start to kind of question things. But I think for the moment they're both in really, really good positions because, as you said, it's surprising to not see more lads do it. Obviously, you've seen Kevin Zeffy going over now to Inter. He's doing really well. Carl Heffernan's playing in AC Milan. So there is lads that are starting to do it now, and it's obviously down to Brexit too, because they can't go to the UK until 18, I think. So if they're moving at 16, 17, going to these countries like Italy. But yeah, it's something I hope we see more, because it's something you've seen with English players a lot in the last few years as well, like going to Germany, like the likes of Sancho or Nani Madueke going to PSV at the age of 16. Like it is happening now more with these players. They're kind of trusting in their abilities to go and get first team football. So it's something I am really hoping that you see more.
No, has he dropped off there?
I was just thinking, yeah, because I thought you said the midpoint, but I could just pick up there. I know we're conscious of time. We said we wanted to get finished just there before 9:30. So just on the James Abanka one, I wouldn't be that worried about it yet. I think we have to take into reality here. He's only 18 years of age. He doesn't even have a full League of Ireland season under his belt. Like, the step up is absolutely huge and massive. I know what Adam was saying. Maybe it's a bit strange that he hasn't played youth team football since November. I kind of thought originally that's what he's probably going to be doing for the first season or two, possibly three. Like, but the fact he's been trusted in the first team, and even just training them every day, he's going to be exposed and learning so much. So I think probably next season you could probably see him getting a move like to a Serie B or C team. Like, so I wouldn't be kind of too worried about that. The Festia Baselli one, I thought you might see a little bit more minutes, especially you kind of seeing he's coming off or coming on their first game of the season. And I think this could be kind of a regular thing. And to say that he's only played 5 times more, and I think if you accumulated all his minutes together, it'd be in around the 90-minute mark. So a bit disappointed, because he kind of felt like, from what we were seeing with him, the 21s and with Derby during the last season, he felt like somebody could really become on Stephen Kenny's radar, where now he's kind of come a bit like a forgotten man. But I still think we know with the talent that's there and the age profile, you wouldn't go pressing any panic button. But just I think it is something we're going to see a lot more of. Like, even another player there, Liam Corrigan, like, he was hitting the ground running with Como in Serie B before he got that ligament injury back in the autumn. So I do think it is something we're going to see more of. I think as well, because of the Brexit thing, I don't think there's some sort of thing that makes it a lot more trickier for Italian clubs and even continental clubs in general to sign British players now. So they are going to go looking towards Ireland a lot more. So I definitely think it is something we're going to see an awful lot more of. And even as Adam's rattled off there with the young lads at Inter Milan and AC Milan, like, there's already a decent contingent of Irish players playing over in Italy, and I can see that happen a lot more, not just in there, but in other countries throughout the continent.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I don't think there's anything more really we need to cover. Someone's come in there, FC Eindhoven, I think it is, and Tranmere Rovers friends has said hi 3 times and asked us to read out their comment. So we've done that.
Very eager.
Yeah, it's very eager. But hey, we encourage it, so it's all good. And I'll just make sure I got the name right there, because it's not coming up on YouTube. It's just coming up on the screen in front of me. But I think that is that. We think we'll park it there till next week, and we will see. Yeah, FC Eindhoven and Tranmere Rover friends. Guys, if you're listening on podcast, don't forget to give us a 5-star review, and if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. You can check the lads out there. You saw the socials under their names as they were talking as well, and don't forget to follow us on all our socials. The link is in the description. We'll speak to you all soon. Have a great week, and come on, you boys in green.